Snow fell in crystalline sheets, each flake catching the amber glow of the street lamps before disappearing into the growing drifts below. The temperature had plummeted to 15 degrees below zero, a cold so severe it seemed to crystallize the very air. Downtown Chicago had emptied hours ago, sensible humans retreating to their warm homes as Christmas Eve settled over the city like a smothering blanket. Desmond Hale stood at his penthouse window, watching the storm with detached interest. The cold didn't bother him, hadn't bothered him for over 4 centuries. His reflection in the glass showed a man in his apparent mid-30s, sharp-featured and pale, with eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. The room behind him remained dark except for the blue glow of his laptop, deliberately devoid of any Christmas decoration. The scent of pine and cinnamon wafted from the lower floors, where his human staff insisted on celebrating. He inhaled sharply, his heightened senses detecting each individual spice in the mulled wine Mrs. Gable had prepared, despite his explicit instructions against holiday festivities. The old housekeeper knew he wouldn't fire her. Good familiars were hard to find, especially ones who understood the delicate balance of running a household for a vampire who was also the CEO of Hale Industries. His phone vibrated against the mahogany desk. Desmond didn't move to answer it. The board could wait until after the holidays. 427 Christmases he'd endured, each more commercialized and hollow than the last. Humans scurrying about, exchanging gifts they couldn't afford, pretending at warmth and connection for a single night before returning to their petty cruelties. A gust of wind rattled the reinforced windows, carrying with it the distant sounds of a city preparing for midnight. Church bells, laughter, music, all muffled by the snow, yet painfully clear to his preternatural hearing. Desmond's fingers twitched at his side, an old habit from when he still smoked, back when tobacco was considered medicinal rather than carcinogenic. He turned from the window, moving silently across the polished floor. The penthouse stretched around him, minimalist and cold, steel, glass, and leather in shades of gray and black. No photographs adorned the walls, no mementos cluttered the surfaces, nothing to suggest the centuries he'd lived through, nothing to remind him of those he'd lost. His watch, a Swiss timepiece worth more than most humans earned in a year, showed 11:43 p.m., 17 minutes until Christmas. 17 minutes until he could retreat to his private chambers with a rare vintage of Blood and the first edition Dickens he read every year, a private tradition of irony rather than celebration. The elevator chimed softly as Desmond descended to the ground floor. The lobby of his building stood empty, the security guard having been dismissed hours ago with generous holiday pay. No one questioned why the CEO of a multinational corporation would want to walk alone on Christmas Eve in a blizzard. His employees had learned not to ask such things. The blast of cold air as he pushed through the revolving door was bracing, though his body registered it as mere information rather than discomfort. Snow immediately clung to his black cashmere coat and Italian leather shoes, an inconvenience, not a deterrent. The streets lay buried under 8 inches of fresh powder, unmarked except for his own footprints trailing behind him. Desmond had no destination in mind. The walk was merely a ritual, a way to escape the suffocating cheerfulness that infected his building each December. He moved with inhuman grace through the deserted financial district, his footsteps nearly silent despite the crunching snow. 3 blocks from his building, he paused. Something had changed in the ambient soundscape. His head tilted slightly, filtering through the muffled city noises, distant traffic on Lakeshore Drive, the hum of heating systems, the creak of buildings contracting in the cold. There, a rhythm not belonging to the mechanical city, faint, almost imperceptible even to his enhanced hearing. A heartbeat, No, two heartbeats, synchronized so closely they nearly merged into one sound. And they were coming from the narrow alley between a closed boutique and an upscale restaurant. "Foolish humans," he muttered, his breath not fogging in the freezing air. Seeking shelter in the worst possible places. He should continue walking. Human suffering was not his concern, had not been his concern for centuries. Yet something about those heartbeats pulled at him. They were too rapid, too light. Not adult hearts. Desmond hesitated, snow gathering on his shoulders as he stood motionless. The wind cut through the urban canyon, carrying with it a scent that made his entire body go rigid. Blood, fresh, sweet, and unmistakably young, mingled with something else. Something that shouldn't exist in this alley, in this city. Something that smelled like home. "Impossible," he whispered, the word dissolving into the night. The alley beckoned, dark and narrow. Christmas lights from the boutique's window display cast intermittent red and green shadows across the snow-covered pavement. The twin heartbeats continued their rapid rhythm, growing slightly weaker with each passing minute. Against centuries of carefully cultivated indifference, Desmond turned into the alley. The narrow passage between buildings channeled the wind into a howling tunnel. Snow swirled in miniature cyclones, accumulating against a row of commercial dumpsters halfway down the alley. The scent grew stronger with each step. Blood and that other impossible smell, like sunlight on ancient stone walls, like the Carpathian forests of his youth. Desmond moved cautiously now, his senses fully alert. Chicago's underbelly housed many dangers, even for one such as himself. Rival clans respected his territory, but would not hesitate to exploit weakness. Humans with knowledge of his kind occasionally turned hunter. The council had eyes everywhere, watching for any misstep from the vampire they reluctantly called king. The heartbeats led him to the third dumpster, its metal sides crusted with ice. A string of broken Christmas lights hung from the edge, their bulbs shattered like tiny, colorful eggshells on the ground below. The lid stood partially open, prevented from closing by something wedged in the gap. Desmond paused, nostrils flaring as he processed the olfactory information. The blood was fresh, but not actively flowing, minor wounds already clotting. Beneath it lay the scent of unwashed human, garbage, and that persistent other smell that couldn't possibly be here. He reached for the dumpster lid, his pale fingers contrasting sharply against the rusted green metal. The hinges groaned as he lifted it fully open, the sound unnaturally loud in the quiet alley. Inside, amidst bags of restaurant waste and discarded holiday packaging, lay a bundle of filthy blankets. The bundle moved. Desmond's hand froze mid-air. The blankets shifted again, and a tiny face emerged, smudged with dirt. Hollow-cheeked, with eyes of such a startling blue they seemed to glow in the dim light. A child, no more than 3 years old, dark hair matted against her forehead, lips tinged blue from cold. "Go away," the child whispered, her voice barely audible even to his enhanced hearing. "Hiding." Before Desmond could respond, the blankets moved again, and a second face appeared. Identical to the first in every detail. Twins. The source of the synchronized heartbeats. "Bad men," the second child said, her eyes darting past him to the alley entrance. Desmond's mind raced through possibilities. Homeless children were not uncommon, even in this affluent area. But these children should be dead. The temperature alone should have killed them hours ago. No human child could survive this cold in nothing but thin blankets, unless they weren't entirely human. "Who left you here?" he asked, his voice low and carefully modulated to avoid frightening them further. The first child shrank back. The second pointed a tiny finger toward the sky. "Mama gone. Up there." Desmond frowned. Orphans, then. But that didn't explain their survival or the scent that clung to them beneath the grime. He reached into the dumpster slowly, telegraphing his movements. You cannot stay here. You'll die. The first twin clutched her sister tighter. Cold, she agreed, but made no move to accept his help. Desmond noticed something then. Despite the freezing temperature, despite their inadequate covering, the children were not shivering. Their lips were blue, yes, but their exposed skin radiated heat he could feel even without touching them. Heat no human child could generate in these conditions. What are your names? He asked, buying time as he assessed the situation. Lily, said the first twin, pointing to herself. Lila, said the second, pointing to her sister. They had it backward, but Desmond didn't correct them. Names were the least of his concerns right now. The alley suddenly felt exposed. If these children were what he suspected, their presence in his territory was more than a coincidence. It was a potential political catastrophe. He made his decision. Come. I'm taking you somewhere warm. Both children shrank back further into the garbage. No, Lily said firmly. Mama said wait. Your mama is gone, Desmond said, harsher than he intended. The children's eyes widened in fear, and he immediately regretted his tone. He hadn't spoken to a child in decades. I mean, she would want you to be safe. Warm. Lila looked at her sister, some unspoken communication passing between them. You smell right, she finally said, her small nose wrinkling as she inhaled. The statement hit Desmond like a physical blow. I smell right, he repeated carefully, his mind racing through implications. These children, if they were what he suspected, should not be able to recognize his scent, unless they had been taught, unless they had been prepared. With deliberate slowness, he removed his cashmere coat and held it open. Come, before anyone sees us. Another silent exchange between the twins, then both nodded in unison. They struggled to climb out of the dumpster, their movements clumsy with cold and exhaustion. Desmond lifted them with one arm, startled at how little they weighed and how much heat they generated. Like holding live coals wrapped in rags, he settled them against his chest and wrapped the coat around all three of them. The children's heads peeked out near his collar, their matted hair brushing his chin. The proximity of their heartbeats thrummed against his silent chest, an almost forgotten sensation. Hold tight, he murmured, and felt tiny fingers clutch his shirt in response. Desmond moved swiftly now, no longer concerned with appearing human. He kept to the shadows, avoiding the main streets, taking shortcuts through service alleys and parking structures. The children remained silent throughout the journey, their eyes wide as they watched the city blur around them. 3 minutes later, they entered his building through the service entrance. The service elevator would take them directly to his penthouse, avoiding any potential witnesses. As the doors closed, sealing them in the confined space, the scent of the children intensified. Beneath the grime and garbage, beneath the sweet undertone of their blood, that impossible smell grew stronger. Dhampir, half vampire, half human, forbidden by council law for over 2 centuries. The elevator ascended smoothly. Desmond studied the twins' faces in the harsh fluorescent light. Despite their filth, their features were delicate, aristocratic. Their blue eyes held an intelligence that belied their apparent age and broken speech. Most telling was their body temperature. Dhampir children ran hot. Their metabolisms accelerated to fuel their rapid growth and emerging abilities. The doors opened directly into his penthouse. Desmond carried the children to the main bathroom, setting them gently on the marble counter. They looked even smaller and more fragile in the stark modern space, their dirty blankets leaving smudges on the pristine surface. You need a bath, he said, reaching to turn on the faucet. Then food. Lily, or was it Lila, shook her head violently. No bath. Find Mama first. Your mother is gone, Desmond repeated, more gently this time. But I need to see if you're hurt. The bath will warm you. The twins exchanged another look, then began unwinding themselves from their filthy coverings. Desmond turned to adjust the water temperature, giving them privacy to undress. When he turned back, both children stood naked on the counter, their skin a patchwork of dirt and bruises. He helped them into the shallow water, noting how they relaxed as the warmth enveloped them. Using a soft cloth, he began to wipe away the grime from their faces, their arms, their backs. They were indeed identical, down to the pattern of bruises on their thin shoulders. As he cleaned the back of the second twin, Lila, he thought, his hand froze. There at the base of her neck, partially hidden by her matted hair, was a mark. Not a bruise or dirt, but a birthmark. He gently turned the child to see it better, using his thumb to wipe away the last traces of grime. The mark was dark red, perfectly formed in the shape of a crescent moon cradling a single star, the crest of the Hale bloodline. His bloodline. Desmond's vision tunneled, the bathroom fading around him until only the mark remained in focus. Impossible. His line had ended centuries ago. He had ensured it. Yet here it was, branded on the skin of a child found in a dumpster on Christmas Eve. A Dhampir child who should not exist. The twin turned her head, those impossible blue eyes, his mother's eyes, meeting his. Found you, she said simply. Papa. The word hung in the air between them. Papa. Desmond's immortal heart lurched in his chest. A sensation he hadn't felt in centuries, not since before the change, before the endless nights. The child's gaze held his with unsettling certainty, as if she'd been searching for him all along. No, he whispered, the word barely audible over the gentle lapping of bathwater. That's not possible. The second twin, Lily, reached out with a dripping hand and placed it on his cheek. Her palm burned against his cold skin, unnaturally hot even for a Dhampir. Mama said we'd find you. Desmond jerked back, nearly slipping on the wet tile. Your mother. Who was she? His voice emerged as a rasp, stripped of its usual authority. The twins exchanged another of their silent communications, their identical faces solemn. Mama is sleeping, Lila said, her fingers tracing the crescent birthmark on her neck. In the ground now. She told us to find you when the bad men came, Lily added. She said our blood would show you. The bathroom suddenly felt too small, too warm. Desmond's mind raced through possibilities, each more impossible than the last. He had no children, had never sired any, not in his human life, and certainly not since his turning. He had made certain of it. Let's finish your bath, he said, forcing steadiness into his voice. Questions could wait. The children needed care first. He continued washing them with mechanical precision, noting every bruise, every scrape on their small bodies. Their skin, once cleaned, had an almost translucent quality, blue veins visible beneath the surface. Despite their ordeal, they seemed remarkably resilient, another Dhampir trait. As he lifted them from the bath and wrapped them in thick towels, Mrs. Gable appeared at the doorway with a stack of children's clothing. I found these in storage, she said, her eyes carefully avoiding his. From when your sister's grandchildren visited years ago, Desmond nodded, grateful for her efficiency. Thank you, Mrs. Gable. Could you prepare something for them to eat? Something substantial. The housekeeper's gaze flicked to the twins, understanding passing between them. Of course, sir. I'll prepare both options. Both options. Human food and blood. The thought sent a fresh wave of unease through him. These children, with their impossible birthmark, and even more impossible claim, would need to feed soon. The Dhampir hunger was unpredictable, especially in the young. After dressing the twins in oversized t-shirts that hung to their knees, Desmond led them to the kitchen. They walked with perfect synchronicity, their bare feet silent on the hardwood floors. They didn't gawk at the mansion's opulence or the priceless artifacts displayed in glass cases. Instead, their eyes tracked every exit, every window, the instinctive vigilance of prey animals. In the kitchen, Mrs. Gable had prepared a feast, a platter of rare roast beef, fresh bread, and fruits. Beside it sat a crystal decanter filled with dark red liquid. Not human blood. Desmond could smell the animal origin, but blood nonetheless. The twins climbed onto the kitchen stools without assistance, their movements fluid and coordinated. They waited, watching him, making no move toward the food. "Eat," he encouraged, sliding the platter closer. Lily reached for the decanter first, her small hand steady as she poured the blood into a glass. She took a sip, then made a face. "Tastes wrong." "It's animal blood," Desmond explained, settling onto a stool across from them. "Safer." "Mama gave us better," Lila said, but took the glass from her sister anyway. She drank deeply, then reached for a slice of beef. Desmond watched them eat with methodical efficiency, noting how they alternated between food and blood, how they maintained constant awareness of the room around them. These were not ordinary children, even by Dhampir standards. "How old are you?" he asked when their pace slowed. "5 winters," they answered in unison, then looked at each other as if surprised by their synchronicity. "And your mother? What was her name?" Another shared glance. Lily spoke first. "Mama was Elise." The name hit Desmond like a physical blow. Elise. A name from another lifetime. A human woman he'd known briefly in Paris, nearly 30 years ago. A fleeting connection during one of his rare periods of mingling with humanity. "Elise Laurent?" he asked, his voice tight. Lila nodded. "She said you danced with her under the moon." A memory surfaced. A charity gala at the Louvre. A woman in a midnight blue dress. Her laughter like silver bells. One night of weakness, of pretending he could still be human. He'd left before dawn, as he always did. "That's not possible," Desmond muttered, more to himself than to the children. "Vampires cannot procreate. It's one of the few certainties of our existence." "Mama said you were special," Lily offered, licking a drop of blood from her lip. Different blood. Old blood. The Hale bloodline was indeed ancient, predating most European vampire clans. But even the oldest bloodlines were bound by the same limitations. Unless... His phone vibrated in his pocket, breaking his reverie. The screen displayed Dr. Aris's name. Desmond hesitated, then answered. "I've analyzed the blood samples," Dr. Aris said without preamble, his voice tense. "Desmond, you need to secure your location immediately. These children have the Hale birthmark," Desmond finished, watching as the twins methodically cleaned their plates. "I've seen it. It's more than that. Their genetic profile shows markers I've never seen in Dhampirs before. Their vampire DNA is dominant, not recessive, and it's a perfect match to yours." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "That's not possible. Neither is finding 2 Dhampir children with body temperatures of 101 degrees, Dr. Aris countered. "Their physiology is unprecedented and dangerous. The Council will want them, especially Valerius." Counselor Valerius. The name alone was enough to send a chill through Desmond's veins. The oldest and most conservative member of the Vampire Council, Valerius had spent centuries advocating for blood purity and the systematic elimination of Dhampirs. To him, half-breeds were abominations, threats to vampire supremacy. "No one knows they're here," Desmond said firmly. "Someone does." Dr. Eris replied. "I've detected unusual network activity targeting your security systems. Someone's been probing your defenses for the past hour." Desmond ended the call and turned to Mrs. Gable, who had been silently clearing dishes. "Initiate lockdown protocol. No one enters or leaves until further notice." The housekeeper nodded and moved toward a panel hidden behind a decorative plate on the wall. As she entered a code, steel shutters began descending over the windows, and the subtle hum of the security field activating filled the air. The twins watched this transformation with unnerving calmness, as if they'd expected it. "Are the bad men coming?" Lila asked, her voice small but steady. Desmond knelt before them, bringing himself to their eye level. "Who are the bad men? Who was hunting you?" "Men with cold eyes," Lily said. "They took other children like us. Shakisu, they smell like you," Lila added, "but wrong, angry inside." "Vampires, then. Council enforcers, most likely." If Valerius had somehow learned of these children's existence, he would stop at nothing to capture them or eliminate them. "They won't find you here," Desmond promised, surprising himself with the fierce protectiveness in his voice. "This place is a fortress." The twins nodded in perfect unison, their trust in him absolute and unearned. It unsettled him, this immediate connection, this instinctive bond. He had spent centuries cultivating solitude, perfecting the art of detachment. Yet these children had breached his defenses with nothing more than a word. "Papa, you should rest," he said, rising to his feet. "I'll show you where you can sleep." He led them to a guest suite on the second floor, far from the master bedroom where he spent his daylight hours. The room, designed for human visitors, featured heavy blackout curtains and a large four-poster bed. The twins climbed onto it without hesitation, curling around each other like kittens. "Will you stay?" Lily asked, her eyes already drooping. Desmond hesitated. "I need to secure the house, but I'll be nearby." This seemed to satisfy them. Within minutes, they were asleep, their breathing synchronized, their small faces peaceful for the first time since he'd found them. He stood watching them for longer than necessary, cataloging their features with vampire precision. The shape of their eyes, the curve of their cheeks, the delicate structure of their hands. He could see Elise in them, her determined chin, her long eyelashes. But there were other features, older features, that stirred memories of portraits in the Hale family crypt. His mother's distinctive brow, his sister's graceful fingers. The evidence was becoming harder to deny, yet the implications were staggering. If these children were truly his biological offspring, everything the vampire world believed about their own physiology was wrong. And if Valerius discovered this truth, Desmond closed the door silently and made his way to his study. The mansion's security monitors displayed no unusual activity, but he trusted Dr. Eris's warning. Someone was watching. Someone knew about the twins. He opened a hidden panel in the wall and removed an ancient wooden box. Inside lay a collection of vials containing dark red liquid, blood samples from every member of the Hale line, preserved through the centuries. A family tradition, originally meant to track bloodline purity. Now it might provide answers. Extracting a vial of his own blood, collected centuries ago, Desmond prepared a simple test. He placed a drop on a glass slide, then added a drop from the sample Dr. Eris had taken from the twins. Under the microscope, the reaction was immediate and unmistakable. The cells merged, recognizing each other, strengthening rather than destroying one another. Paternity confirmed, in the most basic biological sense. Desmond leaned back, a strange hollowness expanding in his chest. He had daughters. Twin daughters born of a human woman he'd known for one night 30 years ago. Daughters who had somehow survived childhood without his knowledge or protection. daughters now hunted by the most dangerous vampire in the council. The security system chimed softly, alerting him to movement at the perimeter. On the monitors, he watched as a black SUV approached the main gate, then turned around at the sight of the locked entrance. Not an immediate threat, but a reconnaissance mission. They were being cautious, testing his defenses. He had perhaps a day before they made a serious attempt to breach the property. A day to decide what to do with the impossible children sleeping upstairs. The logical course of action was clear. Contact the council himself, present the children as Dampier orphans he'd discovered, and allow them to be placed in one of the designated sanctuaries. It would distance him from any suspicion, maintain his position of power, and ensure his continued independence. But the thought of surrendering the twins to the council, to Valerius's influence, sent a surge of primitive rage through him. They were his blood, his responsibility. The last of the Hale line. The study door opened, and Mrs. Gable entered with a crystal glass of warmed blood. "You haven't fed since yesterday," she said, placing the glass on his desk. "And children require strength." Desmond raised an eyebrow at her presumption. "I haven't decided to keep them." Mrs. Gable, who had served his household for 20 years, fixed him with a look that few would dare direct at the Vampire King. "With respect, sir, I believe that decision was made the moment you pulled them from that dumpster." She left before he could respond, closing the door with quiet finality. Desmond drank the blood mechanically, his mind working through contingencies. The mansion was secure for now, but it wasn't designed for long-term isolation. Eventually, he would need to face the council, explain the children's presence. But first, he needed more information. He spent the next hours researching Elise Laurent, piecing together the life of a woman he'd barely known. She had been a geneticist, specializing in rare blood disorders. After their encounter in Paris, she had resigned from her position at the university and disappeared from public records. Facial recognition software found her 5 years later in a small village in Romania, visibly pregnant, living under an assumed name. The trail ended there, until a death certificate appeared 3 weeks ago. Accident, the report claimed. But the timing, so close to the twins' appearance in New York, suggested otherwise. A soft sound at the door interrupted his research. The twins stood there, barefoot in their oversized shirts, watching him with those unsettling blue eyes. "You should be sleeping," he said, closing the laptop. "The house is talking," Lily said. "It says people are coming." Desmond frowned. "The house doesn't talk." "So it sings," Lila corrected, pressing her small hand against the doorframe. "In the walls, like at Mama's house." Desmond moved to the security monitors, scanning the perimeter. Nothing unusual appeared on any of the cameras, but the twins' expressions remained solemn, certain. "Show me," he said finally. They led him to the east wing, an older part of the mansion rarely used. Their steps were sure, as if they'd lived in the house for years rather than hours. They stopped before a section of wall that appeared identical to every other. "Here," they said in unison. "Listen." Desmond pressed his ear to the wall, extending his vampire senses to their limits. At first, nothing. Then, faintly, a vibration. Not sound exactly, but a disturbance in the electrical field that powered the security system. Someone was attempting to create a blind spot in his surveillance. "Good," he said, straightening. "You have keen senses." The twins accepted this praise without smiling, their expressions remaining grave. "The bad men found us," Lily said, "like before." "They won't get in," Desmond assured them, even as he calculated the likelihood of a breach. The mansion's security was state-of-the-art, but against a determined council team, it would eventually fail. "We should hide," Lila suggested. Mama showed us how. No need, Desmond said firmly. This is my territory. No one enters without my permission. The twins exchanged another of their silent communications, then nodded reluctantly. Their acceptance of his authority should have been reassuring. Instead, it heightened his sense of responsibility. These children trusted him implicitly, despite having just met him. Their faith was as unnerving as it was undeserved. Are you hungry? He asked, needing to focus on something practical. They nodded, and he led them back to the kitchen. Mrs. Gable had retired for the night, but the refrigerator contained prepared meals. As Desmond heated a plate of pasta for them, he noticed Lily eyeing the crystal decanter of blood with obvious longing. The animal blood doesn't satisfy you, he observed. It's not warm enough, she said. Not alive enough. The implication was clear. They needed fresh blood, preferably human. A common requirement for young Dhampirs, whose systems hadn't yet adapted to preserved blood. Desmond hesitated only briefly before rolling up his sleeve. Here, he said, offering his wrist. This will be better. The twins' eyes widened, their pupils dilating until only a thin ring of blue remained. They approached cautiously, as if expecting him to withdraw the offer. Just a little, he cautioned. Vampire blood is powerful. Lily went first, her small teeth sinking into his wrist with surprising precision. The sensation was strange, not painful, but intimate in a way Desmond hadn't experienced in centuries. He felt the pull of his blood leaving his body, flowing into his child. When she finished, Lila took her place, her bite identical to her sister's. As she drank, Desmond noticed a subtle change in both children, their skin flushed with color, the translucent quality giving way to a healthier glow. The bruises that had marked their bodies began to fade before his eyes. Lila released his wrist and stepped back, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. Thank you, Papa, she said simply. The words still jolted him, but less violently now. A strange warmth spread through his chest, unfamiliar yet not entirely unwelcome. Eat your pasta too, he said, gesturing to the plates he'd prepared. Blood alone isn't enough. They complied, eating with the same methodical efficiency as before. Desmond watched them, noting how his blood had affected them. Their movements were more fluid now, their eyes brighter. The Dhampir in them was strengthening, the vampire genes responding to pure vampire blood. A soft chime from his phone interrupted the moment. A text from Dr. Aris. Council meeting called, emergency session, subject, unauthorized Dhampir presence in New York. Valerius presiding. Desmond's grip tightened on the phone until the case cracked. Valerius knew. Perhaps not the full truth, but enough to convene the council. As king, Desmond's absence from such a meeting would be noted and questioned. I need to go out, he told the twins, who had finished their meal and were watching him with those unnervingly perceptive eyes. The bad men want you to come, Lily said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Desmond admitted, but I won't lead them back here. Mrs. Gable will stay with you. We can hide, Lila offered again. We're good at hiding. The earnestness in her voice, the practiced survival skill of a child too young to have needed it, stirred something primal in Desmond's chest. Rage, yes, at whoever had hunted these children. But something else, too. Something he hadn't felt since his human days. Protectiveness. Possession. Mine, a voice inside him growled. My blood. My children. No hiding, he said firmly. This is your home now. You're safe here. The words emerged without conscious thought, a declaration he hadn't planned to make. Yet as soon as they were spoken, he knew they were true. Whatever these children were, however impossible their existence, they were his, and he protected what was his. The twins' response was unexpected. Rather than relief, their expressions showed concern. "But you won't be safe," Lily said, reaching for his hand. Her small fingers were burning hot against his cold skin. "The bad men want to hurt you because of us." "I've dealt with bad men for centuries," Desmond assured her, allowing her to hold his hand. "I'm very good at it." This at least drew small smiles from both children. They seemed to like the idea of him being dangerous, finding comfort in his predatory nature, rather than fear. He left them in Mrs. Gable's care, with strict instructions that they were not to leave the secure areas of the mansion under any circumstances. The housekeeper, who had raised 3 children of her own before entering Desmond's service, seemed unfazed by the responsibility. "They'll be safe with me," she promised. "Though I suspect they're more capable than most children their age." "They are," Desmond agreed. "But they're still children. Keep them away from windows and exterior doors. And Mrs. Gable, if anyone breaches the perimeter, use the panic room. No exceptions." The council meeting was held in the penthouse of a building Desmond himself owned, a concession to his status that now felt like a trap. As he entered the elegant conference room, 12 pairs of eyes turned to him, 11 council members and Valerius at the head of the table. "How kind of you to join us, King Hale," Valerius said, his ancient face arranged in a smile that never reached his eyes. "We were just discussing a matter that might interest you." Desmond took his seat at the opposite end of the table, his face a mask of bored indifference. "Council meetings always interest me, Counselor, though I prefer when they're scheduled through proper channels." A few nervous chuckles rippled through the room. The tension was palpable, the other council members clearly aware they were witnessing a power play. "Some matters can't wait for bureaucracy," Valerius replied smoothly, "such as the appearance of unauthorized dampiers in your territory." Desmond raised an eyebrow. "Unauthorized? I wasn't aware we were issuing permits for existence now." "Don't be obtuse, Desmond," Valerius snapped, his composure slipping slightly. 2 Dampier children were tracked entering New York 3 days ago. Their guardian was eliminated, but the children disappeared. Given your well-known softness toward half-breeds, it seemed prudent to inquire whether you've granted them sanctuary. The deliberate mention of a guardian, Elise, being eliminated, sent a surge of cold rage through Desmond's veins. He kept his expression neutral with centuries of practice. "I grant sanctuary to many in my territory, Valerius. It's my prerogative as king. But I make a point of not discussing individual cases in open council." Valerius leaned forward, his ancient eyes gleaming with malice. "These aren't ordinary Dampiers, Hale. Our sources indicate they possess unique genetic markers. Markers of significant interest to the Council's research division." The euphemism wasn't lost on anyone present. The Council's research division was notorious for its experimental procedures on captured Dampiers, procedures few survived. "If such children exist in my territory," Desmond said carefully, "they would fall under my protection by law and custom. The accords are quite clear on jurisdiction." "The accords also require full disclosure of potential threats," Valerius countered. "These Dampiers emit heat signatures well above normal parameters. They've displayed telekinetic abilities documented by our field agents. They represent an unknown variable in our carefully balanced society." Telekinetic abilities. The twins had mentioned the house talking to them, had sensed the breach in the security system before his technology detected it. Not just heightened Dampier senses, but something more. "I'll look into the matter personally," Desmond said, rising from his chair. "If these children are in my territory, I'll ensure they pose no threat." "That's not good enough," Valerius said, his voice hardening. "The Council votes to authorize a search of all properties owned by Desmond Hale, effective immediately." A murmur of surprise ran through the room. Such emotion was unprecedented, a direct challenge to Desmond's authority as king. "On what grounds?" Desmond demanded, allowing a fraction of his power to seep into his voice. The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. "Suspicion of harboring genetically unstable entities," Valerius said, unintimidated. "The vote has already been taken in your absence. 9-2 in favor." Desmond scanned the faces around the table, noting which council members avoided his gaze. Traitors, bought by Valerius's promises or cowed by his threats. Only 2 had opposed the motion, his oldest allies on the council. "You overstep, Councillor," Desmond said softly. "This motion violates 3 separate provisions of the Accords. Extraordinary circumstances require extraordinary measures," Valerius replied. "The enforcement team is already en route to your primary residence. I suggest you cooperate fully to avoid unfortunate incidents." The threat hung in the air between them. Desmond's mind raced through options, calculating risks and outcomes. Direct confrontation would only confirm Valerius's suspicions. Denial would be seen as obstruction. He needed time to secure the twins, to understand what they truly were, to prepare a defense. "Very well," he said finally, his tone glacial. "I'll meet your team at my residence. But be warned, Valerius, if this fishing expedition damages my property or disturbs my household, I'll expect full compensation and a formal apology from the council." Valerius's smile widened, revealing teeth too perfect to be natural. "Of course, King Hale. We're all civilized beings here." The drive back to the mansion was a blur of rage and strategic planning. Desmond called Mrs. Gable, instructing her to move the twins to the panic room immediately. The room was a bunker beneath the mansion, designed to withstand even vampire strength, with its own air supply and security systems independent of the main house. As he approached the mansion gates, he saw them, 3 black SUVs parked along the road, a team of council enforcers standing at attention, waiting for him. Valerius had planned this carefully, ensuring the search team arrived before Desmond could return and conceal evidence. He pulled up to the gate and lowered his window. The lead enforcer, a vampire he recognized as one of Valerius's personal guards, approached. "King Hale," the enforcer said with minimal deference, "we have authorization to search these premises. Please disable your security systems." "Of course," Desmond replied smoothly, "though I must insist you follow proper protocol. My human staff are not to be disturbed or frightened. Any damage to artwork or artifacts will be documented and billed to the council." The enforcer nodded stiffly. Desmond entered the gate code, allowing the convoy to follow him up the long driveway. As they approached the mansion, he noticed with satisfaction that all windows were shuttered, all exterior lights dimmed. Mrs. Gable had prepared well. Inside, the housekeeper met them in the foyer, her expression carefully neutral. "Good evening, sir. Shall I prepare refreshments for your guests?" "That won't be necessary, Mrs. Gable. These gentlemen are from the council, conducting a security inspection. Please inform the staff to cooperate fully." The subtle emphasis on staff was their prearranged signal that the twins were secured in the panic room. Mrs. Gable's slight nod confirmed it. The search began methodically, the enforcers spreading through the mansion with efficient precision. Desmond accompanied them, maintaining the appearance of cooperation while monitoring their every move. They scanned for heat signatures, checked for recent disturbances in dust patterns, examined the security logs. "You have a lot of security for someone with nothing to hide," the lead enforcer commented as they inspected Desmond's study. "I have a lot of enemies for someone who minds his own business," Desmond countered. Occupational hazard of leadership. The search continued for hours, growing increasingly intrusive. Artwork was removed from walls, floorboards tested for hollow spaces, furniture disassembled. Desmond watched it all with outward calm, even as his rage built. This violation of his territory, his privacy, would not go unanswered once the twins were safe. As dawn approached, the enforcers' frustration became evident. They had found nothing. No evidence of children, no unusual heat signatures, no disturbances in the mansion's carefully maintained order. Satisfied? Desmond asked as they regrouped in the foyer. The lead enforcer's expression was sour. For now. But Councillor Valerius has authorized ongoing surveillance of your properties. We'll be watching, King Hale. How comforting, Desmond replied dryly. I'll be sure to wave to your surveillance teams when I collect my morning paper. After the enforcers departed, Desmond waited a full 30 minutes, scanning for any remaining presence. When he was certain they were truly gone, he made his way to the wine cellar, then to the hidden entrance of the panic room. The security panel recognized his palm print, and the heavy door swung open silently. Inside, Mrs. Gable sat in an armchair reading a book aloud. The twins were curled together on a small cot, fast asleep. They've been perfect, Mrs. Gable whispered, closing her book. Not a sound, not a complaint. They understood the danger. Of course they did, Desmond said quietly. They've been hunted before. He approached the cot, studying the sleeping children. In sleep, they looked truly childlike, their faces relaxed, their small bodies vulnerable. The fierce protectiveness that surged through him was no longer surprising, but its intensity still unsettled him. What will you do now? Mrs. Gable asked. They'll be back. Yes, Desmond agreed. Valerius won't stop until he has them, or until I stop him. The implications of that statement hung in the air between them. Open conflict with a council elder was no small matter, even for the Vampire King. It could trigger a civil war within vampire society, destabilize the careful balance maintained by the Accords. Yet looking at the sleeping twins, Desmond knew his course was set. These children were his blood, the last of the Hale line. More than that, they were innocents targeted by a predator who had already killed their mother. Whatever the cost, whatever the risk, he would protect them. He gently lifted one child, then the other, cradling them against his chest. They stirred but didn't wake, instinctively curling closer to his cold body despite the temperature difference. Prepare the jet, he told Mrs. Gable. We're leaving for the Montana compound tonight. Alert Dr. Aris to meet us there. The Montana property was his most secure holding, remote and heavily fortified, known to only his most trusted circle. It wasn't a permanent solution, but it would buy time to understand the twins' abilities, to build a case against Valerius, to prepare for the confrontation that now seemed inevitable. As he carried the children upstairs, planning their escape, the mansion's perimeter alarm chimed softly. On the security monitor in the hallway, Desmond saw them. Not council enforcers this time, but something worse. Council executioners, their black tactical gear and silver weapons unmistakable in the pre-dawn light. They moved with inhuman speed, disabling his security systems one by one. Valerius had never intended to find the twins through legal means. The search had been a distraction, a way to assess the mansion's defenses while the real threat assembled. The twins stirred in his arms, their eyes opening simultaneously. They looked at the security monitor, then at him, their expressions grave but unsurprised. The bad men are here, Lily said simply. The bad men are here, Lily said simply. Desmond's gaze darted between the security monitor and the twins' solemn faces. No fear in their eyes, only a quiet acceptance that chilled him more than any terror could have. They'd been hunted before. They expected this. Not for long, he promised, his voice dropping to a predatory growl. He set the girls down, kneeling to their level. Listen carefully. Do you remember the hidden space I showed you yesterday? Behind the bookcase in the library? They nodded in unison. Go there now. Mrs. Gable will be with you. Don't come out until I call for you, no matter what you hear. The girls exchanged a look, communicating silently, as they often did. Then Lila, always the bolder one, touched his face. You'll get hurt. It wasn't a question, but a prediction, spoken with the eerie certainty that had become familiar. The warmth of her small palm against his cold cheek felt like a brand. I've been hurt before, Desmond replied, allowing himself a grim smile. Now go. Mrs. Gable appeared in the doorway, her usually composed face taut with worry. This way, children. She extended her hands, but her eyes were on Desmond. Sir. Get them safe, that's all that matters. As they disappeared down the hallway, Desmond moved to his study with preternatural speed. The wall panel slid open at his touch, revealing an array of weapons, relics from centuries of survival. He selected a slender blade of ancient silver titanium alloy, its edge still perfect after 400 years. The security feed showed the executioners breaching the east wing. 8 of them, moving with the coordinated precision that made them legends among vampire kind. Behind them, wearing an expression of righteous determination, walked Counselor Valerius. Desmond's lips curled back from his fangs. So Valerius had come personally to witness the twins' capture, or execution. The old laws gave him that right. The blood of impure offspring was traditionally spilled before the eyes of a council witness. Traditions Desmond was about to shatter, permanently. He closed his eyes, drawing deep on powers he rarely accessed. As the oldest living vampire, his abilities far exceeded what most of his kind could imagine. The mansion's temperature dropped precipitously as he pulled energy from the air itself. Frost crystallized on the windows, spreading in delicate patterns across the glass. When he opened his eyes again, they glowed with cold, blue fire. The first executioner died before he knew Desmond was there. A silent approach from behind, the ancient blade severing his head with one clean stroke. The second turned just in time to see his companion's body crumble to ash, his mouth opening in warning that never came as Desmond's hand punched through his chest, extracting his heart in one fluid motion. 6 remained, now alerted and moving into defensive formation. Their weapons hummed with enchantments designed specifically to counter vampire strength. Silver-edged blades that could cut through immortal flesh. Projectiles loaded with compounds that would paralyze even the oldest of their kind. Desmond Hale, the lead executioner called out, his voice steady despite the bodies of his comrades disintegrating at his feet. By order of the High Council, surrender the abominations into our custody. Desmond stepped into the light of the grand foyer, blade dripping with dark ichor. They are under my protection. The law is clear. Half-breeds are forbidden. Their existence threatens us all. The law is obsolete, Desmond countered, circling slowly. As are you. They attacked in perfect synchronization, 3 from the front, 3 from behind. In his younger centuries, Desmond might have been overwhelmed, but age had brought power, and rage had focused it to a killing edge. He moved like smoke between them, the ancient blade singing through the air, an arm severed here, a throat opened there. Their enchanted weapons scored hits, a deep gash across his shoulder, a burn along his ribs, but the pain only fed his fury. Blood splattered across marble floors as the battle raged through the mansion's grand rooms. Furniture splintered under thrown bodies. Chandeliers crashed down as combatants leapt from walls and ceilings in the 3-dimensional combat unique to their kind. 4 down, then 5. The last executioner, realizing his fate, attempted retreat. Desmond caught him at the shattered front entrance, lifting him by the throat. "Tell the council what happened here," Desmond snarled, fangs fully extended. "Tell them what awaits anyone who threatens what's mine." He flung the executioner through the air, the vampire's body crashing into the trees beyond the driveway. Then he turned to face Valerius, who stood amid the destruction with remarkable composure for someone who had just witnessed the annihilation of an elite killing squad. "You've committed treason," Valerius said calmly, brushing a speck of ash from his immaculate suit. "The penalty is final death," Desmond laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Treason? Against what? A council that would murder children? Laws written by frightened old men who fear anything they don't understand? They are abominations. Their existence violates our most sacred. They are the future." Desmond cut him off, advancing slowly. Blood dripped from his wounds, sizzling where it hit the floor. "And you know it. That's why you fear them." Valerius's composure slipped, revealing the fanaticism beneath. "Half-breeds have always been eliminated. The mixing of bloodlines weakens us, dilutes our power. These creatures are particularly dangerous. The reports of their abilities are true," Desmond finished for him. "They have gifts we don't understand. Gifts that might ensure our survival in a changing world. Or lead to our extinction," Valerius spat. "You would risk everything. Our secrecy, our purity, for these mongrels." The slur ignited something primal in Desmond. He moved with blinding speed, seizing Valerius by the throat and slamming him against the wall hard enough to crack the plaster. "Choose your next words carefully," he whispered, his face inches from the counselors. "They may be your last." Valerius struggled against the iron grip, his own fangs extending in defensive reflex. "Kill me, and the full council will hunt you to the ends of the earth. The children will be found. They will be studied and then destroyed." "Or," Desmond countered, "we could take this to the council directly. Let them see what I've seen. Let them decide if these children represent threat or opportunity." Valerius's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "What game are you playing, Hale?" "No game. A reckoning." Desmond released him, stepping back. "The council chambers, tomorrow night. I'll bring the twins, and we'll settle this according to the oldest laws, the ones even you can't circumvent." "The right of presentation," Valerius scoffed. "That hasn't been invoked in millennia. It remains valid. Any vampire of royal lineage may present a case directly to the full council, with all members present. No proxies, no preliminary judgments." Valerius straightened his suit, calculating. Desmond could almost see the thoughts racing behind those ancient eyes. The counselor was weighing options, looking for advantage. "And if the council rules against you?" he finally asked. "Then I will abide by their decision." Desmond lied smoothly. If the council ruled against the twins, he'd burn the entire vampire world to ash before surrendering them. Valerius must have sensed the deception, but the formal challenge had been issued. By their own laws, he could not refuse. "Tomorrow night," he agreed coldly. "Bring your wards. We shall see what the council makes of them." He turned to leave, then paused. "You've existed for a very long time, Desmond. Perhaps too long. You've forgotten what we are." "No," Desmond replied quietly. "I've remembered what we could be." After Valerius departed, Desmond made his way to the library, his wounds already healing. He pressed the hidden switch, and the bookcase slid aside to reveal Mrs. Gable sitting with the twins, reading them stories as if executioners hadn't just invaded their home. The girls looked up simultaneously, their unusual eyes assessing him with that penetrating gaze that seemed to see past flesh into soul. "The bad men are gone," Lily said. But more are coming, Lila added. Mrs. Gable closed the book. Sir, you're injured. It's nothing. Desmond knelt before the twins. Tomorrow, we're going to meet the council, the leaders of my kind. They need to see you, to understand what you are. They want to hurt us, Lily whispered. I won't let them, Desmond promised. But first, we need to prepare. There's something I need to confirm. Later that night, after Mrs. Gable had bathed the twins and dressed their hair, Desmond examined their shoulders in the warm light of the nursery. There, exactly where he'd suspected, on each girl's right shoulder blade was a small birthmark. Not the random patterns typical of human skin, but a precise, symmetrical design. The ancient royal crest of the first bloodline. His bloodline. Sir, Mrs. Gable breathed, seeing it clearly for the first time as well. Does this mean it means their mother was no random victim? Desmond said quietly, his mind racing through implications. Valerius didn't tell the council everything. These children aren't just Dhampirs. They're my descendants. The pieces fell into place with terrible clarity. The twins' mother, whoever she had been, must have carried his bloodline, diluted through generations. The unique combination of his ancient lineage with human DNA had produced something unprecedented. Dhampirs with abilities no half-breed had ever manifested. And Valerius had known, had perhaps even arranged the mother's death, intending to capture the twins for study before eliminating them. Rest now, he told the girls, pulling their covers up. Tomorrow, we reclaim your birthright. The council chamber existed in a pocket dimension, accessible only through certain nexus points around the world. The New York entrance lay beneath an abandoned subway station, its ornate doors visible only to vampire eyes. Desmond arrived precisely at midnight, the twins holding his hands. They wore matching dresses of deep burgundy, their silver-white hair braided identically. Mrs. Gable had outdone herself, ensuring they looked every inch the royalty they were. The ancient guards at the entrance stiffened at the sight of the children, but dared not challenge Desmond directly. The massive doors swung open, revealing a vast circular chamber ringed with 13 thrones. 12 were occupied by the council members, their faces illuminated by floating orbs of cold light. The 13th throne, empty for centuries, stood directly opposite the entrance. Valerius rose as they entered. Desmond Hale invokes the right of presentation, he announced formally. He brings before this council 2 half-breeds, claiming protection for them under laws long dormant. Murmurs rippled through the assembled council. Many had not seen Desmond in decades, some in centuries. He had withdrawn from vampire politics, preferring to manage his vast holdings from a distance. Speak, Desmond Hale, intoned the eldest counselor, a female vampire whose origins predated written history. Present your case. Desmond stepped forward, the twins moving in perfect unison beside him. Honorable Council, I bring before you not abominations, but evolution. These children represent what our kind might become, a bridge between worlds that have been separated too long. Half-breeds are forbidden, another counselor called out. The law is absolute. Laws change when circumstances demand it, Desmond countered. Our numbers dwindle, human technology advances. How long before they discover us, hunt us to extinction? These children offer an alternative path. What alternative? Valerius scoffed. Diluting our bloodlines until we're no better than mortals? Adaptation, Desmond replied. Survival. He guided the twins forward. Show them, children. The twins released his hands and stepped into the center of the chamber. They joined their own hands, and the temperature in the room began to rise. The cold orbs of light flickered as a new radiance emanated from the girls themselves, a golden glow that spread outward in concentric rings. Several council members recoiled, raising hands to shield sensitive eyes. "Impossible," someone whispered. "They generate heat and light," Desmond explained. "They can walk in daylight. They have strength and speed beyond human capacity, yet they can pass undetected among mortals. Their hearts beat, they breathe, they grow." "Abominations," Valerius hissed. "Descendants," Desmond corrected sharply. He nodded to the twins, who turned simultaneously, pulling down the collars of their dresses to reveal the birthmarks on their shoulders. The chamber fell silent as the implications registered. The first bloodline's crest was unmistakable. "These children carry my blood," Desmond declared. "They are the last of my lineage, and by the oldest laws, the ones upon which this very council was founded, they are under my protection." The eldest counselor leaned forward, her ancient eyes narrowing. "How is this possible? You have sired no children." "Not directly," Desmond acknowledged. "But over the centuries, there were humans I favored. Some may have carried my blood, passed through generations, weakening but never disappearing, until it met the right vessel." "Their mother," the counselor surmised. "Yes, a woman Valerius had killed after the children were born." All eyes turned to Valerius, whose face had gone rigid with fury. "Is this true, counselor?" the eldest asked. "I eliminated a threat," Valerius snapped. "These creatures emit heat and light, the very elements that can destroy us. They are weapons, created to infiltrate our kind and destroy us from within." "They are children," Desmond countered. "Children with gifts we barely understand. Gifts that might ensure our survival in a world that grows more hostile to our existence with each passing decade." The council chamber erupted in argument, voices rising as factions formed. Some supported Valerius, citing ancient laws and the purity of bloodlines. Others, sensing opportunity, sided with Desmond. Through it all, the twins stood calmly in the center, their strange eyes watching the proceedings with that unsettling wisdom. Finally, Desmond raised his hand for silence. "There is one more thing the council should witness." He drew a small silver knife from his pocket. The final proof of their heritage. Before anyone could object, he sliced his palm open, allowing dark blood to pool in his cupped hand. He knelt before the twins, offering it to them. "Desmond, no!" Valerius shouted, lunging forward. Too late. The twins each touched a finger to the blood, then to their lips. The effect was immediate and stunning. The golden glow surrounding them intensified tenfold, expanding to fill the chamber with warmth and light so bright that every vampire present cried out, covering their eyes. All except Desmond, who stood bathed in the radiance, unharmed. When the light finally dimmed, the twins stood transformed. Their eyes glowed with inner fire, their skin luminescent. They turned to face the council in perfect synchronization. "We are the Daywalkers," they said in unison, their voices resonating with power beyond their years. "We are the bridge between worlds. We are the future." The council chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then, one by one, the council members rose from their thrones and bowed their heads, not to Desmond, but to the twins. All except Valerius, who remained rigid with hatred. "This changes nothing," he spat. "They remain abominations in the eyes of our oldest laws." The eldest counselor fixed him with a withering stare. "The oldest law is survival, Valerius, something you have forgotten in your obsession with purity." She turned to Desmond. "The children will remain under your protection. The council acknowledges them as descendants of the first bloodline, with all rights and privileges thereof." "This is madness," Valerius snarled. "I will not accept." "You will," the eldest cut him off, "or you will forfeit your seat on this council. The vote is cast. The decision is made. Valerius's face contorted with rage. For a moment, it seemed he might attack, but even in his fury, he recognized the futility. 12 council members stood against him, and Desmond, whose power had been demonstrated so graphically in the destruction of the executioners. "You will regret this," he said finally, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "All of you." He turned and strode from the chamber, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. The eldest counselor sighed. "He will cause problems." "Let him try," Desmond replied, placing protective hands on the twins' shoulders. Their skin still radiated warmth against his cold palms. "We'll be ready." 3 months later, Desmond stood on the balcony of the Montana compound, watching the twins play in the garden below. They chased butterflies through carefully tended flowers, their laughter carrying on the summer breeze. Ordinary children, in this moment at least. Mrs. Gable appeared at his side, offering a crystal glass filled with dark liquid. "Your evening refreshment, sir." "Thank you, Mrs. Gable." He accepted the glass, sipping the blood thoughtfully. "Any word from our sources?" "Valerius has gone to ground. The council has stripped him of his position and frozen his assets. The remaining executioners have been reassigned to your personal guard." Desmond nodded. Valerius would return eventually, with new allies and new schemes. The war for the twins' future, for the future of vampire kind, had only begun. Below, Lily looked up suddenly as if sensing his thoughts. She waved, her face breaking into a smile that transformed her serious features into something purely childlike. Lila joined her, both of them beaming up at him with unguarded affection. Something shifted in Desmond's chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the twins' supernatural heat. For the first time in centuries, he felt the stirring of an emotion he'd thought long dead. Hope. The sun began to set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold. Soon the night would come, the time when his kind ruled the darkness. But as he watched the twins playing in the last rays of daylight, their silver hair gleaming like halos, Desmond realized a profound truth. The future belonged not to creatures of darkness or light alone, but to those who could walk between worlds, like these children, like himself, learning after centuries of existence to embrace change rather than fear it. He inhaled deeply, savoring the scent of the twins' unique blood. Human and vampire mingled into something entirely new. Their heartbeats, steady and strong, formed a rhythm he had come to find more soothing than any music. The king of vampires smiled as darkness fell, no longer feeling